Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. Well, if you're all looking for more evidence that I'm just crap at predicting what's going to happen on the Hot 100 these days, well, okay, maybe it's just specifically a Jay-Z related issue, because just as I underestimated how much 444 would have had an impact, I also overestimated how long people would want to hear it on the Hot 100, as the majority of that record left the charts and a weird cluster of songs rushed in to fill the void, leading to a week that in some ways feels oddly leaden, but in other ways feels way more busy than I was expecting. More returning entries than new arrivals, which is notable in the summer, a lot of gains, and a top 10 that stubbornly refuses to move all that much at all. So let's start off with that, as Despacito by Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, and Justin Bieber holds #1 yet again. And here's the thing, if you take a look at the radio and streaming numbers, it's not exactly stable right now. It's actually starting to fall off a little bit. The problem is that there's nothing solid in its competition to knock it off the #1 spot. And nowhere is that more apparent than Wild Thoughts by DJ Khalid featuring Rihanna and Bryson Tiller at #2. Sure, strong airplay momentum, great streaming, great YouTube, but its sales stats are surprisingly weak, and that is the closest competitor. Returning up to #3, we have That's What I Like by Bruno Mars despite losses across the board. And yep, it still has enough radio presence to hold up over I'm the One by DJ Khalid featuring Justin Bieber, Chance the Rapper, Quavo, and Lil Wayne, and slipping down to #4. Yeah, YouTube is great, but streaming overall looking especially shaky, and airplay's pretty close behind. Compare this to Unforgettable by French Montana featuring Sway Lee, which is actually doing pretty well, up to #5 on better streaming and YouTube, real sales momentum, and some solid airplay gains. The question is whether or not it's rising fast enough to be a real threat. What it also did do was knock Shape of You by Ed Sheeran out of the top 5 down to #6. And here's the funny thing, it might be losing radio, but it actually had a semi-solid week in other categories. It didn't quite lose as badly as you would expect. It'll hold steady against Believer by Imagine Dragons for at least a little longer at #7, which might have the sales and the airplay edge and even a little bit of streaming, but without YouTube, it might not get any higher. And that's a similar case for There's Nothing Holding Me Back by Shawn Mendes at #8. Radio loves this, guys, and sales is considerable, which is not bad considering the song is pretty tolerable. I don't mind it, but it's also analogous to Body Like a Back Road by Sam Hunt up to #9, because for some ungodly reason, sales and radio aren't dying here yet. And finally, we have a new entry to the top 10 that honestly surprised me a fair bit, despite him being, for all the same reasons as the last two, Attention by Charlie Puth at #10. Look, I'll be the first to admit it's a decent song, at least coming from Charlie Puth, but I'm surprised it actually got up this high, pretty much entirely on big sales and radio, just like the rest of the young white guys here without much likable personality or charisma. Okay, you know what, that was probably a little bit mean, so let's not dwell on that and move on to our losers and dropouts. In the latter case, well, putting aside all the Jay-Z dropouts, and there were a lot of them, the only two worth noting are Hurricane by Luke Combs and Slide by Calvin Harris featuring Frank Ocean and Migos, both of which had respectable runs and will make the year-end list regardless. I find the losers this week much more interesting, as they either come from debuts that lost traction, or tracks where Jay-Z started a downward spiral that's just continuing on. In the latter case, we got First Day Out by T Grizzly, dropped to 69, Squalla by Jason Derulo featuring Nicki Minaj and Ty Dolla $ign to 79, and God, Your Mama and Me by Florida Georgia Line featuring the Backstreet Boys to 80. But it's not like Jay-Z had a great week here either, as even his two surviving songs took pretty measurable hits, with 444 down to 61, and The Story of OJ down hard to 72. The last two losers didn't really surprise me all that much. Glorious by Macklemore featuring Skylar Grey down to 99, because it will not have more traction, and Praying by Kesha to 40, which to be expected. I kind of presume this is happening. She debuted higher than I personally expected, and with real radio traction, I predict she'll probably turn the losses around here, especially if the sales, or especially if the on-demand streaming manages to recover. Now, where the charts are a lot more chaotic are in the gains and returning entries, mostly as the songs that I expected rebounded from Jay-Z to recapture old positions. In particular, the returning entries kind of surprised me, as they were mostly all over the place. No Complaints by Metro Boomin featuring Offset and Drake to 100, Rollin' Fallen by Calvin Harris featuring Future and Khalid to 97. Subime la Radio by Enrique Iglesias featuring Decima Bueno, Zion and Lennox to 95. El Amante by Nicky Jam up to 92. Whatever You Need by Meek Mill featuring Chris Brown and Ty Dolla $ign 89, although that might be linked to the album. Down by Fifth Harmony and Gucci Mane up to 78. That song's just not dying. And best of all, It Ain't My Fault by Brothers Osborne back to 94. Granted, when we get to our gains, it's not really all good news. In fact, what's telling is that the only songs that made serious recoveries here were Thunder by Imagine Dragons to 59 and You Look Good by Lady Antebellum to 67. And the only songs that I would consider great that picked up traction are Versace on the Floor by Bruno Mars up to 47, Loyalty by Kendrick Lamar featuring Rihanna to 62, and that's only really a good song, and Feel It Still by Portugal the Man up to 63. What can I say? It's kind of growing on me. Then we have the songs that debuted that picked up bigger than I expected. Fetish by Selena Gomez featuring Gucci Mane up to 27, and Sorry Not Sorry by Demi Lovato up to 23, likely off the strength of the video, and seemingly so much so she pulled up No Promises by Cheat Codes featuring her to 68 by association. Then we have the gains that are continuing up. Rake It Up by Yo Gotti featuring Nicki Minaj up to 41, joy, and Mi Gente by J Balvin and Willie William to 42, just lovely. Although the gain that will probably gain more attention here is Bodak Yellow by Cardi B picking up considerably to 49. As much as I'm not really a fan of the song, I can see this becoming a hit. Prefer her over Kodak Black. From there, the rest of our gains are pretty scattered. Butterfly Effect by Travis Scott up to 60, What Ifs by Kane Brown featuring Lauren Elena to 65, Yours If You Want It by Rascal Flatts up to 71, Heartache on the Dance Floor by John Party rising up to 81, and finally Crew by Gold Link featuring Brett Fayaz and Shy Glizzy up to 82. Frankly, I'm surprised that stuck around at all. Now, before we get to our very sparse list of new arrivals, seriously, there's only 4 here, folks, I think it's time to bring in a world hit. And while there's a part of me that kind of want to just put Power by Little Mix on this list for how utterly silly and overblown it is, I'm still not quite sure I'd put it in my top 5 favorite Little Mix songs from glory days. There's just simply other tracks that I'd prefer to pick first. So instead, let's talk about something that's bound to be even more controversial.
Hey mama, don't stress your mind, we coming home tonight. Hey mama, we're gonna be alright. Dry those eyes, we'll be back in the morning when the sun starts to rise. So mama, don't stress your mind. So mama, don't stress your mind.
So can I say something? For as much as it's not really better than Tracy Chapman's original, I actually kind of really like Jonas Blue's remix cover of Fast Car with Dakota. It reflected a tightness and restraint that captured so much of the husky power of the original, even if I think it does lack the gut punch of the final verse that was on the original. But regardless of that, I personally want to keep an eye on Jonas Blue the same way as keep an eye on Kygo. And while I wasn't really crazy about his second UK hit Perfect Strangers, which always felt like the hook was a little bit too overmixed, Mama, it's a much more potent track. And sure, part of it is because William Singe's vocals are multi-tracked to sound like a one-person boy band, and I'm an easy sucker for that sound, as you all know. But I think there are 2 bigger reasons why this song actually works for me. Number 1, a strong, well-defined tropical synth melody that plays counterpoint to the vocals that builds its layers really well. And number 2, lyrics that kind of temper their go wild instincts with a reassurance to that mother that they'll still want to live tomorrow morning and will somehow actually make it home. It's an interesting pivot you don't often see in this sort of dance song, and in terms of grounding the track a little bit, kind of works for me. Even if I do think the song runs a little bit short at barely making 3 minutes. He could have had a bridge there, could have done a little bit more with the song. But overall, yeah, it's a solid tune. I hope it eventually crossed over to the US. But now on to our very sparse list of new arrivals. Number 96, Woman by Kesha featuring the Dap-Kings horn. So this was the second single that Kesha rolled out to support Rainbow, and I'll admit while Praying was the song that she had to make, this one might have intrigued me more going in, the first snippet of what Kesha would tap into with more creative control. And what we get honestly, I wish I liked this a little bit more than I do. Sure, there is something ramshackle and intentionally sloppy about Kesha's giggling delivery that can be kind of endearing, but I kind of wish she had opted to play this with a little bit more straight face, especially considering how the chorus plays itself much more seriously, with the Dap-Kings bringing in the horns to some of the minor chords, hit some of the choppier guitar grooves, and that's before we get a more staccato organ and sax-infused bridge that doesn't quite help the groove overall in the song. Tilting towards a little bit more frenetic, nasty blues rock might have worked a little bit better to maintain that momentum. And for the lyrics, oh look, I get the power of making a direct empowerment anthem complete with a lot of cursing. It definitely fits in the Pink mold. I get why Kesha would go in that direction, but I wish the details felt a little bit more fleshed out or rooted in Kesha's unique style of writing. Even though I did dig the reassertions that she did actually write this shit, which given how many pop stars in her mold still don't, hell, that's got weight. But as a whole, you know what, it's a good song, but I liked Praying a hell of a lot more. I'm more than intrigued where this album is gonna go, so we'll see, I guess. Still good though, check it out. Number 91, Young, Dumb and Broke by Khalid.
Young, dumb, broke, high school kid. Young, dumb, broke, high school kid.
You know, there's a part of me that if I have time at some point, I want to sit down and cover Khalid's debut record, American Teen, mostly because of the wildly divergent critical opinions on it have left me pretty curious. And I remember finding Location something of a fascinating song when I covered it here 6 months ago, and I liked his hook on Rollin', so what is his follow-up? Does it manage to rope me in? Well, there's more actual groove to the song, courtesy of the more stable bass and hi-hats against the swells of organ, and I do like that Khalid seems somewhat more self-aware in the flimsy relationships and hookups and self-absorption. They're a factor of being young, dumb, and broke high school kids that doesn't quite give them a pass, but enough of an explanation for why they would act that way. That being said, I can't exactly say I'm entirely wild about him just dropping into his falsetto to repeat the same hook with a little bit more mumbling, and while it's definitely catchy, kind of undercuts how anthemic that it's trying to be, at least to me. Well, okay, well I'm not really crazy about this song. I definitely get its appeal. I can see it doing pretty well. It's not bad. But speaking of an artist who is young, very much dumb, and deserves to be very, very broke, number 86, Jerika by Jake Paul and Erika Costell featuring Uncle Kade. There's a part of me that knows that simply by placing Jake Paul's name in the tags and description of this video, that it will do better than average, and I'm faintly repulsed by it. Even by talking about this bullshit, I'm perpetuating his reach. I don't even want to acknowledge that I know the backstory behind this song, that Jake Paul married his girlfriend Erika Costell. If you think this is anything beyond a transparent attempt to drive up views, you must be new here. So when they decided to make this song to commemorate this event, immediately just kind of felt gross to me. And not just because Jake Paul is such a terrible rapper who can't stay on flow and can barely even rhyme. Even if he wants to spit over a blurry mess of a guitar and stuttering trap rhythm that even Post Malone would say needs some work here, and oh, that's funny. The consistent issue here is that Jake Paul is so clearly a spoiled little fuckboy who can't differentiate Future from Quavo, who admits in the first line that he used to call his wife now Team 10's mom, not helped by Erika outright demanding that he put her ass in a Tesla, and all the flossing about her and her husband here, and you can tell by all the vocal layering that she can barely even keep a tune. And then Jake Paul saying, "If you were a dude, I think I'd die," which is a sentiment that I don't think demands the mental fortitude to unpack even further. Then there's also someone named Kade Speiser who is on this called Uncle Kade. Apparently he's famous on Instagram, and his verse is somehow even more pitiful as he tries to hype up Jake Paul as a family vlogger now. Okay, am I the only one really creeped out by how so much of this is trying to reinforce settling down and cranking out babies to his young fan base as early as possible, who probably can't tell how much of this is being staged, even as Jake Paul talks about eating out his girl like a chicken thigh, which, no, that's not sexy at all. So yeah, it should be no surprise to anyone that this is absolutely awful. And as for Jake Paul, you know what, it might have been partially staged, but there is a part of me that got a vicious sense of satisfaction when David Dobrik cracked him in the back of the head with a baseball bat as Jake Paul tried to fake placing David's house up for sale. Ironic because it wasn't David's house, but his friend's house. And there's a part of me that thinks that David really kind of wanted to make it hurt for real. I prefer a meme of that chart than this song, because this blows. And then finally, number 73, A Lie by French Montana featuring The Weeknd and Max B.
100,000 for the time. Yeah, they fucking with us, that's a lie. A lie, a lie, a lie. A lie, a lie, a lie.
So I don't think I could follow that, and I don't think anyone was preparing on French Montana to have as much success as he's had in 2017. But even I can't deny that Unforgettable is a solid enough song, and if he was pulling in The Weeknd this time around, hey, he basically got Sway Lee to rip off The Weeknd for that Unforgettable song. Maybe getting the Genuine article would work well? Unfortunately, A Lie winds up being a not particularly good song all around, and it's not redeemed by grabbing an old Max B verse that was written 8 years ago to tag onto it. Now, to be fair, it's actually better than French Montana's verse, which is most distinctive for rhyming a bunch of words with themselves and threatening to choke someone from their choker. And since guys don't really wear chokers, that adds a connotation that gets real ugly real fast, along with a bunch of gang posturing that I don't buy for a second. The only other thing is The Weeknd saying that he reps for Canada like Trudeau, which is kind of amusing enough for the reference. I like that The Weeknd actually reps for Canada. But beyond that, it's not like the production or hook is all that distinctive enough to click for me, beyond a bunch of blurry synth and flute tones against a percussion line that actually sounds pretty well textured and organic, I'll give it that. But beyond that, like the majority of French Montana songs, I'm not gonna remember this exists. Sorry. So that was our pretty short weekend. Wow, the best and worst, they fell out easy here, because even while I'm not exactly wild about Kesha's Woman with the Dap-King horns, it's the biggest standout here, especially opposite something as awful as Jerika by Jake Paul and Erika Costell, which is easily the worst. Up next, well, we're gonna have a full tracking week for songs coming from Linkin Park, and I expect a fair few of them to return despite some very, very unfortunate circumstances. But I'll speak on that next week, and until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.